What if Spider-Man woke up in the world of the boys and became the only hero anybody actually trusted? How does Homelander handle a rival he cannot buy? And what does Vought do with a kid who refuses to sign anything? Picture it like this. The moment Thanos closed his fist on Titan, half of everything went to dust. Peter Parker felt himself start to go. Then the fading stopped. The ground came back, and he hit pavement in a city that was not his own. It looked like New York. It simply was not. For 3 days he wandered, half of it in the suit and half of it as a kid in a hoodie. On the 4th night, he sat on a ledge above the traffic and said it out loud. There's no Avengers here, no S.H.I.E.L.D. The heroes on the billboards are people I've never heard of, and this suit is the most advanced thing for 1,000 miles. Nobody is coming to get me. I get myself home or I don't go home. He breathed out slowly. I hope they're all okay. Mr. Stark. Ned. May. He was still saying their names when something tore down the street below him, fast enough to bend the air. What happened next did not look real. A man running at the speed of a bullet went straight through a young woman on the curb. She came apart into red mist, and the sound arrived a half-second later. Peter dropped into the middle of it, where a skinny guy in a store polo stood perfectly still, holding 2 hands that were no longer attached to anyone. Peter went after him, cutting every corner and every rooftop he could find, and never closed the gap. Karen, I need help. Of course, Peter. Calculating intercept. Gold lines bloomed across the inside of his mask, pointing at an alley 3 blocks ahead. He took it, planted himself, and fired. A train ran straight into it. The web took his legs and folded him into the asphalt at 200 miles an hour. Peter wrapped him up before he could breathe, and the strange part was that he never fought back. He just lay there looking terrified, like a man caught doing something he had done before. What is wrong with you? Peter muttered. No sirens came. Nobody came at all, so he dragged the man back to the corner himself and waited. When the police finally arrived, they took A train away and looked Peter up and down like he was the strange thing at the scene. Nice new suit, web weaver. Web weaver? He went looking for the guy from the curb, but an ambulance had carried him off already. The next morning, Peter went swinging over the rooftops and made himself a plan. All right, enough feeling sorry for yourself. Learn the city first, everything else after. He grabbed a newspaper on the way down, and there was nothing in it. A superhero had killed a woman in the street, and the biggest story in town did not exist. He kept checking for days. Nothing. When it finally broke, it arrived, finished and polished. A-Train had been chasing an armed robber, and the whole tragedy was an accident. There had been no robber. Peter stared at the screen. I thought these people were just famous. They're not famous. They're protected. He tracked the guy from the curb to an electronics shop and went in as Peter. No mask, nothing showing. Hey, how are you holding up? Hello, can I help you find something? The kid's eyes were still swollen. Peter talked circuit boards with him for 10 minutes, could not make himself say the woman's name, and left. Then he stayed close. That was how he saw a big man in a long coat lean on Huey until Huey agreed to something. It was also why he was on the block when an invisible man followed Huey back to the store, put his face through the counter, and lifted a television to finish him. The window came in first. Spider-Man came through it a half-second later and kicked translucent into the wall. You okay, buddy? Web Weaver. Okay, seriously, who is Web Weaver? My name is Spider-Man. Translucent swung, and Peter went over him without looking. Hitting people from behind is rude. He webbed him up and used him on the ceiling, the floor, and finally the drywall. How are you even seeing me? Oh, sorry. Heat vision. Butcher walked in on the end of it and stopped cold. Oi, and who exactly are you meant to be, mate? The gun came up. You're the man who took Huey this morning, Peter said, and pulled the weapon out of his hand with the strand of web. Before it could become a real fight, Butcher checked his watch. Vought and the coppers, 3 minutes. The three of them left together. At the hideout, Peter listened to Butcher and Frenchie argue over how to murder the man in the trunk. You're actually going to kill him. Butcher didn't blink. Glad you turned up, mate, truly. But I hate soups. All of them. You included. So either walk out that door or help me put this one in the ground. Peter went outside to think. He was a stranger here, and he knew it. But everything he had seen said the same thing. In this city, the powerful were brands, and a brand protects itself first. No duty, no responsibility, only image. Is it even my place to step in? He asked the skyline. By the time he came back, it was over. Huey had killed Translucent and stood above it shaking, staring at his own hands. That was the moment Peter understood the rule of this world. When the powerful refuse to carry the weight, somebody with no power pays it instead. So he joined them, and he bought his way in the only way that lands with men like these. He took the mask off in front of all of them. Butcher still did not trust him, but he was not stupid either. Nothing in 20 years of intel had ever described a soup who could do what this kid did. So he shook the boy's hand, smiled, and quietly started digging into where he came from. And across town, Homelander watched the same 9 seconds of footage 40 times in a row. A store camera had caught it from the ceiling, a window coming inward, a red and blue shape crossing the room faster than the frame could hold it. Then Translucent, the man nobody could see, stuck to drywall like a coat on a hook. He leaned toward the screen. Play it again. The analyst played it again. What is he? We don't know yet, sir. Homelander smiled with nothing behind it. The strange part was not the speed. It was not the strength either. There had been 11 people in that store, and every one of them walked out breathing. He had watched 1,000 fights like this. Somebody always died. He sat back and let the loop run itself. Huh, he said, to nobody at all. 59 floors up, Stan Edgar called a meeting at 6 in the morning. No press team, no Ashley. 7 people and a table. The boy had no file, and that was the entire problem. Every super in this country came from a vial, a hospital, and a contract. Compound V only worked one way. Injected into an infant, it rewrote the nervous system before the body finished forming, which meant every powered person alive had a birth record with Vaught's fingerprints on it. This one had none. No clinic, no parents, no invoice, no batch number, nothing. Gentlemen, Edgar said, we did not make him. Somebody at the table used the word alien. Edgar did not care what the boy was. He cared who owned him. Surveillance on every rooftop that thing has touched in the last week. Quietly. Then find out what he wants, because everyone wants something. Butcher was working the same question from the other end, and getting the same nothing back. He had contacts inside 3 federal agencies. He had a woman in records who had not failed him in 12 years. He fed her the face, the real one, the one the kid had taken his mask off to show them. She ran it for 2 days, and called back sounding almost embarrassed. No passport, no school photo, no arrest, no lease, no dentist, no dead relatives. The boy did not exist before last Tuesday. Butcher sat in the dark of the van for a long while after that. He had spent his whole life proving soups were manufactured, every one of them a product with a receipt sitting in a drawer somewhere. That was how you beat them. You found the paperwork, and you pulled it. A soup with no paperwork scared him worse than Homelander ever had, because there was no string to pull, and a man like Butcher only knew one way to work. He lit a cigarette and let it burn down without touching it. Then he started the engine and picked up the radio. Frenchie. Find out where the spider sleeps. On the 40th floor of Vought Tower, Ashley Barrett had not slept. She had 11 interns and 400 hours of street footage, every phone clip and bodega camera and traffic pole in Brooklyn. By Thursday she had a map, and the Red Kid moved in a loop. Warehouse District a little after 10. Then the bridge. Then the same 3 blocks near a Queen's electronics shop, every single night, like something was anchored there. She circled the shop, and did not know why it mattered. She only knew the loop was a schedule, and a schedule was a door. She brought it upstairs in a folder. Stan Edgar looked at it for 9 seconds. "Buy him," Edgar said, "before anyone explains to him what he is worth." The next night, Peter came down onto a rooftop water tank and found the roof already occupied. 4 men in identical charcoal suits stood around a folding table with a bottle of water sweating on it. Behind them, a helicopter held station off the parapet, close enough that the downwash flattened his web line against the brick. His spider sense did not scream. That was the part he noticed first, and instead it hummed low and wide, the way it did around crowds and cameras, not the sharp spike it gave for guns. Whatever this was, nobody up here intended to hit him. That somehow felt worse. Ashley stepped out from behind the men with a tablet against her chest and a smile she had practiced. "Hi. Hello. Wow, okay, you are shorter than the footage." Peter stayed in a crouch on the tank. "Is this an ambush or a job fair?" "It is an offer," she said, and started reading. The number came out first because it always did. $40 million a year, guaranteed before merchandising. A residence in the tower, a legal team that made problems evaporate. Full membership in the 7, the youngest ever, with a debut special and a 3-film slate already in development. Ashley said the word slate twice. She said the word family once, and it landed like a coin dropped in an empty room. Peter listened to all of it. Then he asked one question. "Does it come with a train?" The men in suits did not move. Ashley's smile stayed exactly where it was. "I am sorry, does it what?" "The woman on 67th Street. Peter said. He ran through her. "There was no robber. I would like the company to say that out loud, on camera, and I would like it said before I sign anything. That is a communications matter. She was a person. She was a tragedy," Ashley said, "and we grieve her. And the legal exposure on that language is roughly 9 figures, so no." There it was, the whole company in one sentence. Peter looked at the helicopter and the table and the water bottle nobody was going to drink. He thought about the kid in the store, Polo with the swollen eyes, still coming to work every morning, still saying, "Hello, can I help you find something?" Then he stood up out of the crouch. "You flew 4 lawyers and a helicopter to a roof at midnight," he said. "That is a lot of gas to tell a teenager you would rather pay him than apologize. You know they make a card for this, right? It says sorry, and it costs $2. One of the suits looked at his shoes. Ashley tried the number again, the way people do when the number has always worked. 60 million, 80. She said she could go to 80 in the car on the way back. Peter shook his head at every step, and the shaking of his head was recorded from 4 angles. I am not for sale, he said. Not because I am better than you, because if I take the money, the next girl on the next curb has nobody either. That is the whole job. Somebody has to be the person who does not look away. And here is where Vought lost the night. The iron spider suit did not carry a microphone. It carried a jaw sensor. Nanite threads sat flush against the mandible and read the vibration of the bone itself, so Karen could hear Peter clearly inside a jet engine, through a mask, underwater. That sensor fed an open comm channel, and when Ashley's team had pulled the helicopter alongside the roof, their crew loop had grabbed every unencrypted signal in a 100-foot bubble, the way flight comms are built to do, so nothing gets missed in the air. So Peter had been broadcasting into Vought's own helicopter the entire time. The loop was recorded. The recording went to a server that was shared with 11 interns, and one of them, 23 years old and 3 months into the worst job of her life, put it somewhere it could not be taken back. By 6 the next morning, the audio was on every phone in the city. A woman offering $80 million, a kid asking her to say a dead woman's name, then a kid saying no. In 70 years of Compound 5, in 70 years of contracts and reveals and rebrands, no soupy had ever refused Vought. Not one. The company did not have a form for it. The trending clip was 11 seconds long, and it played 400 million times in a day and a half, and by lunch the audio had been cut over songs, over sports highlights, over 100,000 videos of ordinary people saying it back to their own bosses. Somebody has to be the person who does not look away. In the conference room on 40, nobody sat down. Ashley cried into her sleeve while she talked. The lawyers described the leak as a personnel failure. A brand manager suggested the company frame it as an inspiring moment of a young hero finding his voice. Stan Edgar let them finish. Then he closed the folder in front of him and set both hands on it. He did not say no to a contract. Edgar said. He said no to us, in public, where every other asset in this building could hear it. Do you understand what that costs? Every one of them is now doing arithmetic they were never supposed to learn. He looked around the table until the room was completely quiet. We will not negotiate with him again. We will not slander him yet, because the audience is warm, and the audience is stupid, but not that stupid. We will simply establish, quietly and permanently, that the world outside this building is more dangerous for him than the world inside it. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. Find out what he needs, Edgar said. Then make sure we are the ones who own it. 9 days later, Butcher did something he never wrote down. He had a burner phone and a number that rang inside Vaught's compliance office. At 2 a.m, he called it and gave them the kids' patrol route. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the Red Hook waterfront, 11 to 3. He gave them the roof he liked, the fire escape he used, the exact block where he always stopped to check on a bakery that opened at 4. Then he hung up and sat in the dark with his hands on his knees. It was not betrayal in his head. It was a test. Butcher had spent 20 years learning one thing about people with powers. Push them and the mask slips. So he wanted to see what came out of the kid when 12 men tried to put him in the water. If it was a monster, Butcher would know before it grew. If it was not, he would know that too, and that possibility scared him more than the other one. He also set a contingency. Frenchie had built it a week earlier, a shaped charge on a timer, sunk under the pier in a lobster crate, enough to bring 40 feet of decking down on whatever was still standing at the end. Vought moved fast. The order did not come from Edgar, and it did not come in writing. Ashley made one call, and 2 hours later a wet team was staging out of a produce warehouse in Sunset Park. 12 men, ex-6th Fleet, contracted through a shell company that had been dissolved and reincorporated 4 times in 6 years. They carried suppressed carbines, and one thing they had never needed before: a body bag rated to 800 pounds. And because Vought never spent one asset when it could spend 2, they sent the deep as well. He had been in Ohio for 3 weeks, apologizing to a camera. This was his way back. "Get in the water," they told him, "and stay there. Whatever falls in, keep it down." Nobody said the word kill on the call. They said resolve. Pater came over the Red Hook rooftops at 11:40, right on the route Butcher sold. The first thing he noticed was the birds. There were none. Gulls sat on the container stacks 200 yards out and would not come closer, and the back of his skull went cold and loud before his eyes found a single reason why. That was the part nobody in this world understood about him. It was not reflex. It was not luck. Something older than thought read the room a full half-second ahead of everyone in it, and it had never once been wrong. "Karen," he said. "How many?" 12 heat signatures, Peter. Suit integrity at 87%. I would recommend leaving." "Yeah," he said. "Me too." Then the first round left the first barrel, and the night came apart. He was not there when it arrived. The web hit the crane arm, and he went up and sideways, and the bullet buried itself in a shipping container behind where his chest had been. 9 more men fired at once. Peter went through the volley the way water goes through a fence. The fight lasted 90 seconds, and nobody died. He took the 2 on the catwalk first, because they had the angles. He took the gunner on the forklift by pulling the forklift. A man swung a rifle butt and hit a web line instead. And the line held, because the fluid he made shear thickened under impact. Slow pressure, and it stretched like taffy. Fast pressure, and it went rigid as steel cable for 1/10 of a second, then let go. It meant a man could be stopped without being broken. It meant every hit landed at exactly the force he chose. 8 of them were on the ground before the 9th thought to run. Peter caught him at the edge of the pier, held him by the vest, and set him down gently on his back. "Hey," he said, "real quick. When you got hired for this, did anybody mention the part where I do this literally every night?" The man said nothing. He was crying. The deep came out of the harbor at the last one. He came up 40 feet and landed on the pier hard enough to split 2 planks, and he was not funny, and he did not banter. He grabbed Peter by the throat and walked him backward toward the black water, and for 4 full seconds it worked. He was stronger than he looked. He drove Peter under and held him there, and the harbor closed over the lenses of the mask. Karen's voice came through the water, flat and calm. Oxygen at 90 seconds. Peter did not fight the arm. He fired past it. 2 web lines caught the mooring bollard on the pier, and he pulled, and 1,100 pounds of tension took both of them out of the water in one motion. He came up first. He put the deep into a stack of pallets, and webbed him to it at the shoulders, the wrists, the waist, and then, after a second of thought, the mouth. Then he walked the pier and did the thing that ended up on every screen in the country by morning. He collected all 12 rifles. He stood them on their stocks in a bundle, barrels out, and webbed them together at the middle, and the result looked exactly like a bouquet of flowers. He left it on the hood of their own van. He called an ambulance for the man with the broken forearm, the only serious injury on the pier, and he waited with him until it came. In a van 11 blocks away, Butcher watched all of it. The bodycam feed came off the team leader's chest rig, and Butcher had bought his way into it for $4,000. He watched at full volume. He watched a boy get shot at by 12 professionals and answer by taking their guns away and arranging them into a joke. was in the passenger seat with the coffee going cold. "You leaked the route," said. Butcher did not look over. "I did. 12 men with rifles. You wanted to see what he'd do. I wanted to see what he is. And?" Butcher was quiet for a moment. "There's a charge under that pier," he said. "Frenchies. Go pull it." Stared at him. "You put a bomb under the kid." "Go pull it," Butcher said again. "Now." He watched the screen while swore and got out. On the feed, Spiderman was crouched beside a man who had tried to drown him 20 minutes earlier, holding a compress on his arm and telling him to keep it elevated. Butcher had hated soups for a long time. He had a list of every reason, and he could recite it in his sleep, and every reason on it was true. He had never once had to ask himself whether the list was complete. He sat in the dark van and understood, for the first time in his life, that there might be a kind he had never met. 61%. That was the number read off his laptop on a Tuesday morning, twice, because he did not believe it the first time. 61% approval. 5 weeks. 0 marketing. He turned the screen so the room could see. Butcher looked at it the way a man looks at weather he did not order. Frenchie whistled. Huey leaned in and grinned like it was his own report card. The bar on the chart was blue, and it was taller than every other bar on the page. "You get what that means," said. "Vought spends $400 million a year buying that number. This kid got it for free, out of a backpack, in 5 weeks." Nobody in that room said the obvious thing out loud. If a number can be earned, it can also be taken from the people who bought theirs. It had happened in pieces, and none of the pieces were big. That was the strange part. There was no press conference, there was no origin special, no rooftop interview, no sponsor. There was just a kid who kept showing up. A delivery cyclist on 9th dropped his chain in traffic and started crying because the shift was already lost, and rent was Friday. A red and gold shape landed beside him without a sound. Peter turned the crank backward, walked the chain onto the small ring with his thumb, and pushed the derailleur cage forward to take up the slack. 30 seconds. Try that. The video of it ran 2.1 million times before lunch. An old woman on Vernon carried 6 bags of groceries toward a walk-up with a broken elevator. He took 4 of them. 6th floor, she warned him, like a threat. "Then we should probably start," he said. He carried them up all 6 flights on foot, on the stairs, like a person, because she asked him not to do the wall thing while she was watching. There was a man asleep on a bench in February who woke up under a thermal blanket he did not own. There was a cat in a storm drain on Atlantic. There was a girl who lost her retainer down a subway grate and got it back, rinsed in a paper cup. None of it was heroic in the way this city had been trained to understand heroism. That was exactly why it worked. MM tracked it because tracking things was what MM did. He built a spreadsheet nobody asked for. 11 confirmed sightings a week, average response time under 4 minutes, and here was the column that made Butcher put his beer down. Injuries caused, 0, not low, 0. Across 5 weeks, 47 incidents, and 100 and some arrests handed to police still breathing and still complaining. Compare that, MM said, to a single A-train Tuesday. The web was doing quiet work in all of it. Peter mixed the fluid himself now out of hardware store solvents and a polymer he cooked on a hot plate, because the Stark cartridges had run out in week 2. It went out as a liquid under pressure, hit the air, and pulled into a rope in about 1/10 of a second. It held roughly 120 times his weight. Then, at the 2-hour mark, the strands broke down on their own and came off a sleeve like dust. That detail mattered more than the strength did. Every man he tied to a lamppost walked away eventually. Nothing he did to a person was permanent. Then came the video that finished it. A phone caught him on the roof of a bodega at dusk, sitting on the ledge with his knees up, eating half a bagel through the bottom of the mask. The kid holding the phone was maybe 14 and narrating in a whisper like a nature documentary. Yo, that's Webweaver, that's actually Webweaver. Peter looked over. He did not stand up, and he did not pose. Hey, quick thing. Oh my God, he's talking. My name is Spiderman, actually. Not Webweaver, Spiderman. Wait, for real. The news says Webweaver. Yeah, the news made that up. I never agreed to it. It sounds like a craft store. So what do I put? Spiderman. 1 word. Hyphen in the middle. It's kind of important to me. Then he waved, said take care of yourself, and dropped backward off the ledge out of frame. The kid's scream was on the audio. 18 million views in a day. It did something no campaign in Vought's history had ever managed. It gave the public a job. People started correcting each other in comment sections, in bars, on the subway. Anchors who said Webweaver got shouted at by their own producers within a week. A morning show host tried it on air out of habit, and the crawl at the bottom of her own screen corrected her in real time. By Friday, the name Vought's marketing department had chosen was dead, and a name a kid picked in a bedroom in Queens in another universe was on the side of a hot dog cart on 5th. The merchandise came next, and none of it was legal. Shirts on folding tables outside the ballpark, red and blue masks on a rack in Chinatown, badly stitched, eyes too round. A bootleg action figure that came in a bag with the stapled paper card. Vought's legal department opened 412 takedowns in 9 days and lost ground every single day because you cannot sue a thing you do not own the trademark to, and Vought owned nothing. They had never been told no before. They had certainly never been told no by a market. Ashley made the mistake of putting that in a slide. Huey found Peter on the fire escape that night with a paper plate on his knee. He had a tab open on his phone and the ridiculous grin of a man delivering good news for once. There's a petition to rename the 9th Street footbridge after you. That's insane. I've never even been on that bridge. 14,000 signatures. There's also a guy selling a candle that smells like you. What do I smell like? Cedar and, I want to say, obligation. Peter laughed so hard he nearly lost the plate. Then he went quiet, the way he did. "Huey, this is the part where it goes bad, right?" "Yeah," Huey said. "Yeah, probably." Below them, the city moved along like it always had, except that somewhere in it a man was about to read a number that had not moved against him in 18 years. Peter did not know that yet. He set the plate on the sill, said good night, and stepped off the rail into the dark between the buildings. 99 floors above the street, at 10 minutes to 6 in the morning, a light came on by itself. Homelander liked the numbers early. He liked them before Ashley touched them, before anybody had time to shape the bad parts into something soft. A tablet waited on the glass table with the overnight brand report already open. He read the first page standing up. His national favorability had been 88 for 6 straight years. That morning it said 82. He read it again. The number did not move. Underneath it, in a smaller font nobody had bothered to hide, was the reason. A second line on the same chart, a line that had not existed 2 months ago, climbing 19 points in 5 weeks across 41 markets. It had no marketing spend attached to it. That was the part he kept going back to. 0. Vought spent about $400 million a year telling America how to feel, and the kid had spent nothing, and the kid was winning. Homelander sat down. Very slowly, the way a man sits when he has decided not to break the chair. The report had video attached. Focus groups recorded the night before in a beige room in Newark. 30 people with dials in their hands. The dial was a cheap piece of hardware and a brutally honest one. A respondent turned it right when they liked what they saw, and left when they did not. And the software sampled the position 4 times a second and averaged the room into one moving line. Nobody could lie to it fast enough. A face could hold a polite expression for an hour. A thumb could not. He played the Homelander reel first. The line sat high and flat, the way a wall sits, approval without heat. Then they played 30 seconds of shaky phone footage. A kid in a red and blue suit, kneeling in the street, putting a chain back on a bicycle while its owner cried about it. The line went up and kept going. It hit the ceiling of the instrument and stayed pinned there for 11 seconds. The moderator asked the room to explain it, and a woman in her 50s shrugged like the answer was obvious. "Homelander's the one who saves the country," she said. "Sure, but he's the one who'd help me." Homelander watched that clip 4 times. He was not stupid, and that was always the problem with him. He understood exactly what he was looking at. Not a rival with a better power set. Not a threat in the way Vought used the word in memos. Something worse. A man the country liked for reasons that could not be purchased, produced, reshot, or focus-tested into existence. He heard the tablet's frame give before he noticed his hand had closed. The glass went white, then powder. Titanium folded like foil between his fingers, and a thin line of blood that was not his ran off the corner where a battery cell had opened. He set the ruined thing down on the table with enormous care, as if putting it down gently, now made the last 3 seconds a different event. Then his phone chimed. He had a gala at 7. 52 minutes later, he stood under the lights at the Vought Global Children's Foundation breakfast, one hand on a 9-year-old's shoulder, holding a cardboard check for $2 million. The photographer counted down. Homelander smiled. It was a beautiful smile, the exact same one from the poster in every airport in the country, and it arrived on his face in under a second, and did not waver for the whole 8-minute press line. Ashley, standing off camera, wrote in her notes that he seemed to be in a great mood. Stan Edgar watched the same footage from his office and read it correctly. He asked for a meeting at 11. Homelander came in without knocking, which was the only way he ever came in, and stood at the window with his back to the room. Edgar did not look up from his file. "You crushed a company device this morning," he said. "That is the 4th this quarter. I mention it only because the replacement forms cross my desk. I'm fine. I did not ask. The boy in the mask is a marketing problem, and marketing problems are solved slowly and quietly. We are already solving it. What you will not do is go near him. He isn't a problem. He's a nobody with a costume. Then you will have no difficulty ignoring him. Understand me clearly. If you touch that young man in public, you hand him something we cannot take back. You make him real. Right now, he is a video. Let him stay a video." Homelander turned around then, and he was smiling again, which was somehow the worst version of him. "You're worried about me, Stan. That's almost sweet." "I am worried about the share price," Edgar said, and went back to his file. "Do nothing. That is not a suggestion. Homelander said he understood. He even said thank you." He walked out through the 42nd floor and let 3 separate employees tell him good morning, and he answered all of them by name because he was very good at that. At 2 in the afternoon, he was 7,000 feet over Queens, out of the flight corridors, holding still in the cold. Finding the kid took him 11 minutes. He did not need surveillance for it. His hearing worked on the same principle a stethoscope does, only without a limit worth mentioning. He filtered the city the way a man filters a crowded room for one voice, dropping the traffic, dropping the sirens, dropping 400,000 conversations until he had one signature left. A heartbeat that ran a little fast. Web line firing every 9 seconds. A young man's voice 3 blocks off Roosevelt, apologizing to somebody for landing on their car. Homelander hung there in the cloud layer and listened to him work for almost an hour. Then he said it, quietly, to nobody at all. "Let's see what you are when there's no crowd, kid." Every choice Homelander made that afternoon cost him something he could not get back. He did not know that yet. He came in from the east at 4 in the afternoon, slow, almost polite, and stopped in the air 200 feet above the bridge. Peter was hanging off a light stanchion, eating a sandwich he had paid for with his last $6. Karen woke up first. "Peter, that heat signature is running 11 degrees above human." "Yeah," he said. "I noticed." The suit put a red ring around the figure in the sky. Peter did not swing away. He wrapped the rest of the sandwich, tucked it into a fold of nanotech, and stood up on the cable like a man getting off a bus. Homelander drifted down until they were level. The smile arrived before he did. "Hi, you're the one everybody's talking about. I'm the one who's late for something, actually. I just want to talk. That's all. 2 professionals." Peter looked at the 4 lanes of traffic under them. "Sure, great spot for it. You know what I like about you, kid? You're new. New is exciting. New is also temporary. That's a lot of words for hello. I'm being generous. Take the deal they offered you. Smile in the photos. Stay out of my numbers." And there it was. Not the city. Not the people on the bridge. Numbers. Peter had spent 5 weeks wondering what a man like this actually wanted, and the answer turned out to be a chart on a screen in a building he had never entered. He said nothing. Silence, it turned out, was the one thing Homelander could not tolerate. The first hit came without warning. No wind up, no tell, just a hand closing on Peter's collarbone and the whole world turning into speed. They went through the top of a steel truss at something near 400 miles an hour. Peter's spider sense had fired 0.08 of a second early, which was the only reason he got his forearms up. That sense was not magic. It read the pressure wave a moving body pushes ahead of itself, the air stacking up in front of a fist, and it told him where the wall was going to be before the wall arrived. Against a normal man, it was a superpower. Against something that moved faster than the air could warn him, it bought him half a blink. Half a blink was still half a blink. He twisted, kicked off Homelander's chest, and threw himself sideways into open sky. Karen's voice came flat and quick, suit integrity dropping. Peter fired a line, caught the underside of the span, and swung hard into a turn. Okay, he's fast, he's strong, he's rude. Homelander did not chase. He hovered, straightened his cape, and looked genuinely puzzled. That was the part Peter would remember later. The man was not angry. He was curious, the way a kid is curious about an insect under a glass. Then he looked down at the traffic. Peter saw where the eyes went and understood a full second before it happened, and 1 second was not enough. 2 thin red lines crossed the bridge deck. They did not touch a single person. They cut the roadway on both sides of a city bus, clean through, and the pavement under it simply stopped existing. 40 feet of concrete let go and fell toward the water with a bus riding it down. Route 14. 43 people on board. Peter counted them later off the news. In the moment, he only saw the shape of the thing, tipping nose first, windows full of faces. He stopped fighting. That was the choice. And he made it in less than a heartbeat, and Homelander watched him make it. Peter hit the bus roof feet first, and fired both launchers into the underside of the bridge. Web was not rope. Rope stopped a falling thing all at once and tore whatever it was attached to. Web was a polymer that stretched under load and turned motion into heat, absorbing the energy across the whole length of the strand instead of dumping it into one point. 9 tons of bus, falling for 1.5 seconds, carried roughly the impact of a small building. He needed to spend that energy, not block it. So he fed it out. 6 lines, then 10, then 16, each one anchored to a different rib of the underspan, each one stretching and singing and going white as it bled the fall down to nothing. The bus stopped 11 feet above the East River. It hung there, swinging, groaning, with the schoolteacher pressed against the glass, screaming into a phone. Karen said, "Integrity falling." Peter said, "I know. Get me the doors." He worked fast because he had maybe 40 seconds before the man in the sky got bored. He tore the rear door off its frame and started passing people up hand over hand along a web ladder he was building as he climbed. An old man. 2 kids in matching backpacks. A woman who would not let go of a grocery bag until he told her he would carry it, and then carried it. Every phone on the bridge above was pointed down. Every one of them was recording. He was on passenger 31 when Homelander landed on the hanging bus and drove him through the roof. The inside of that bus became the worst place Peter had ever fought. No room, no leverage, 12 people still strapped in their seats, and a man who could sneeze through a wall. So Peter stopped trying to hit him. He fought like a mechanic instead. He webbed the seat rails to spread the load. He put his own body between the boot and the aisle, and every time Homelander swung, Peter moved the swing into steel instead of into people. He took a knee to the ribs that cracked, 3 of them. He took a punch that folded the suit's shoulder plating and blacked out his left eye lens. Karen's voice thinned out, integrity still falling. "Peter, your heart rate is. Not now." He got the last 12 out. All of them. 43 for 43 on camera, while being beaten half to death by the most beloved man in America. Then Homelander made his mistake. He grabbed Peter by the throat, lifted him out through the roof, and held him up in the open air so the crowd on the bridge could see him do it. He wanted the picture. He wanted every phone to catch the moment the new thing stopped being new. Peter's arms were pinned, his legs were not, and neither were the other 4. The Iron Spider's Waldo legs came out of the back of the suit in a quarter of a second, driven by nanotech actuators Tony Stark had built for lifting collapsed masonry. 3 of them slammed into Homelander's forearm and shoulder and did nothing at all. The 4th came up under the jaw, and its edge, tungsten hard and moving at the speed of a bullet train, dragged across his cheekbone. The sound it made was small. A tick, like a fingernail on glass. Homelander dropped him. Peter caught a cable, spun, and landed on the broken lip of the roadway with his ribs screaming. Above him, the most powerful person in the world was standing on nothing, touching his own face, staring at his fingers. There were 2 drops of blood on them. He had been shot 11,000 times. He had walked out of a burning reactor. He had never once had to look at his own blood, and he was looking at it now in front of 300 phones. Peter got his good eye open and said the only thing there was to say. "Hey, you've got a little something on your cheek. Right there." Nobody laughed because nobody dared, but the sound of it carried, and it went out live on 4 separate streams, and by morning it had been watched 60 million times. Homelander did not answer. He rose straight up, fast, until the bridge was a line and the crowd was nothing, and he hung there over the harbor alone. He wiped the cheek with his thumb. Already closing. Gone in a minute. It did not matter. What mattered was the sound in his ears. He had spent 40 years listening to the world. He could hear a heartbeat through a concrete floor from a mile out. He knew what fear sounded like in other people, the tight, fast knocking he had learned to enjoy. And now, hanging alone in the cold air over New York, he heard one running fast and shallow and wrong, and it took him 3 full seconds to work out whose it was. It was his. Nobody had ever measured that. Not Vought, not the labs, not the men who made him. There was no chart for it, no analytics screen, no focus group. Somewhere below him, a kid in a red suit was being pulled onto a stretcher by the people he had just saved. And up here, the strongest man alive was listening to his own chest and learning a brand new word for it. Karen back on the bridge said it quietly through a dying speaker. Suit integrity 61%. 9 hours after the bridge, the first video went up. It was 11 seconds long. In it, Spider-Man braced both hands under the bus, and then he pushed. The bus tipped. It went over the rail and dropped, and the sound the file carried was a crowd screaming. Homelander arrived a beat too late. Arms out, face open with grief. The caption read, "He let them fall." Peter watched it on Huey's laptop in the back of the hideout. He had saved every passenger. He had counted them on the pavement himself, 43, out loud, twice, because his hands were shaking too hard to trust the first count. Now he was watching himself do the opposite. "That's not what happened," he said. Nobody in the room answered him, because nobody in the room had to. The lie was not cheap, and it was not sloppy. Vought had 11 years of licensed Homelander footage and 6 weeks of Spider-Man clips scraped off phones, and both had been fed into a model that learned how each body moved. The suit was the easy part. Nanotech read as clean geometry, and clean geometry is what these systems copy best. The hard part was hands, so they had built the whole 11 seconds around one gesture. Push instead of lift. Everything else in the frame was real. That was the trick. You do not fake the bus, the smoke, the rail, or the screaming. You fake 4 fingers and let the audience's memory fill in the rest. Frenchie leaned over the screen and made a small, disgusted noise. "It is good work," he said. "That is the worst part." The video had 300 views when Huey found it. It had 2 million by lunch. Huey did what Huey did, which was open 40 tabs and start reading names. The accounts pushing it were new, but not obviously new. Some had been sitting quiet for 2 years, posting about lawn care and a hockey team, waiting. That was what the aging was for. A platform trusted an old account, so Vought's contractors bought them by the thousand and kept them boring until the day they were needed. Then they woke up together. Ran the numbers off a scraper and read them flat. 4,000 new accounts an hour, he said. Steady, not a spike. Somebody's throttling it so it looks organic. They post the same thing? Peter asked. Never the same thing. That's the tell. 30 templates, shuffled words, different typos on purpose. Real people don't agree in identical sentences, so the machine doesn't either. By 2 in the afternoon, the phrase was everywhere, and it was always the same 3 words. Reckless, unvetted, illegal. Peter had never heard anyone say illegal about him before. It landed strangely because it was true. He had no license here, no registry, no oversight body, no papers with his name on them, and until that morning nobody had wanted any. At 4 the anchor came on. She had a grey suit and a serious desk, and she did not shout at first. She walked the audience through it gently, the way you lead someone somewhere they would not have walked on their own. An unidentified individual. Foreign technology of unknown origin. No accountability to any American institution. Then she said the word, and once she said it, every other network had permission. Domestic terrorist, she said. That is the term. Let us stop being polite about it. Kimiko turned the volume down without being asked. Peter kept watching the woman's mouth move anyway. Butcher was the only one who looked almost happy. Welcome to it, mate, he said. They don't need to beat you. They just need everybody to be tired of you. The bounty came at 6. $10 million. Announced by Vought as a public safety reward for verified information leading to the identity of the individual known as Spider-Man. Not his arrest, not his location, his name. 10 million for a name, in a city where the average household made 61,000 a year. Peter sat down on the edge of the crate and did the arithmetic without meaning to. That was every neighbor he had ever waved at, every kid he had handed a phone back to, every deli owner, every doorman, every stranger on the block who had seen a skinny kid climb into an alley and come out a second later with a mask. $10 million turned all of them into a coin flip. Huey sat down next to him with the laptop still open in his lap. I've been watching it happen for 6 hours, Huey said, like watching somebody build a house. There's a guy whose whole job is the typos. Peter did not look up. How many of them are real? Some. That's the thing nobody says. They only need to start it. Once it's moving, regular people carry it for free, because it's more fun to be angry than to check. I saved 43 people, I know. There's video of me saving them. Real video. It's on 12 different phones. Huey was quiet for a second. Yeah, he said. And every one of those phones is on a platform Vought advertises on. Peter pulled the mask off and set it on his knee. The lenses were still dark. Karen had gone into a low-power sleep at 61% and had not said anything in 3 hours, and he found that he missed her voice more than he wanted to admit. They can't do this, he said. They already did it, Huey said. To me, sort of. Smaller. When Robin died, they had a statement out before I got home from the hospital. It said she stepped into the road. She didn't step into the road. But it's in an article, so now that's what happened. The polling came at 9 that night, because Vought commissioned the polling too. 5 weeks earlier, this city had put him at 61% favorable with no marketing, no billboards, no ad spend, nothing but a kid in a mask carrying groceries up 6 flights of stairs. The new number was 48 against, 41 for. 11% were not sure. He kept staring at the 11%, because those were the only people still waiting to hear from him, and he had no idea how to reach a single one of them. Across town, on the 59th floor, Stan Edgar read the same numbers off a printed sheet and did not smile. He passed the sheet to Ashley, who was holding a tablet against her chest like a shield. He is not a person anymore, Edgar said. He is a liability with a merchandise footprint. Keep the bounty running until somebody sells him. And if nobody sells him? Ashley asked. Edgar took his glasses off and cleaned them. Then we stop looking for his name, he said, and we start looking for whoever he loves. The bottle came from a crowd he had just saved. 11 people out of a stairwell full of smoke. The last one a woman he carried down 4 flights while the handrail glowed. He set her on the curb. He was still checking her breathing when the glass hit the side of his head and broke. It did not hurt. That was somehow worse. He turned around and there was no one villain to look at, just faces, ordinary ones, a man in a work jacket and a woman holding a phone up sideways. Somebody yelled the word from the broadcast. Somebody else laughed at it. A kid near the front looked confused, like he had been told to be angry and had not decided yet. Peter raised a hand. "Everybody's okay," he said. "Everybody got out." Nobody answered him. The phone stayed up. The phones always stayed up now, and they were not filming the fire anymore. He left before the trucks arrived. He did not take the rooftops. He walked 2 blocks in an alley with his hood of webbing pulled down and his shoulders forward, the way anybody walks when they want to be a shape instead of a person. Then the rain started, and it did not stop for the rest of the night. He went up because up was the only place left. A water tower on a building nobody used, tar paper roof, a ladder with 3 rungs missing. He climbed it slowly. Halfway up, the suit stuttered and the world went dim. Karen said it flatly. Power cell at 34%. Shedding non-essential systems. The wings went first. They always did. The membranes under his arms drew more current than anything else in the suit, because holding a shape against moving air is a constant fight, and a constant fight costs constant power. They folded themselves in and locked. Then the Waldo legs retracted into the housing at his back, and stayed there. Then the heaters in the weave died, which was how he learned what wet October actually felt like. Last the display faded, gold lines going to grey, until his own eyes were doing all the work again. The spider sense stayed. It always stayed. Nobody had built that part, so nobody could turn it off. He sat on the curved tank with his knees up and the rain going through him. Then he pulled the mask off. It was the first time in 6 weeks that air had touched his face outdoors. He looked younger without it, and he knew that, which was exactly why he never did it. His hair stuck flat. His mouth shook. He held the mask in both hands like it was something he had found instead of something he wore. "Mr. Stark," he said. The rain kept going. "Ned," he said. "May." That one broke him. He put his forehead down on his wrists and cried the way people cry when they are certain they are alone, ugly and quiet and without any dignity at all. Somewhere below him a car alarm went and stopped. On a screen in a bar 4 blocks away, his own face was worth $10 million to anyone who could name it. He said the rest out loud because there was no one to say it to. I could stop. Nobody here knows me. Nobody here is waiting up. I could put this in a dumpster and get a job and eat cereal and let this city have exactly what it keeps voting for. He meant it. That was the part he would think about later. He genuinely meant it for about a minute and a half. He did not hear her arrive. Nobody ever heard Kimiko arrive. She came up the broken ladder without touching the missing rungs, sat down on the tank a full arm's length away, and looked out at the same nothing he was looking at. Peter got his face under control. "Hey," he said. She nodded. He waited for the rest of it. Butcher would have given him a speech about the world. Huey would have apologized for something that was not his fault. Frenchie would have talked until the feeling went away. She did none of it. She sat in the rain in a jacket that was already soaked through and let the silence be a place instead of a problem. After a while, she reached over and took the mask out of his hands. He let her. She turned it around, straightened the lenses with her thumbs, wrung the water out of the neck, and folded it once, carefully, the way you handle something that belongs to someone. Then she held it out to him. That was all. She did not smile. She did not sign anything at him. She just held it there, arm steady, rain coming off her knuckles, until he took it back. He looked at the thing in his hands for a long time. He thought about the woman on the curb who was breathing because he had counted the flights on the way down. He thought about the man who threw the bottle, and how somebody had gone to the trouble of teaching him to. That took money. That took a room full of people deciding it was worth doing, and underneath it all sat the same rule he had learned, standing over Huey's shaking hands. When the powerful refuse to carry the weight, somebody with no power pays it instead. Tonight, that was him. Tomorrow, it would be somebody who could not take a bottle to the head and walk it off. He pulled the mask back on. The lenses stayed dark. 34% could not spare the light. "Okay," he said, "okay." Kimiko stood up. He stood up after her, and the two of them went down the broken ladder into the rain, one behind the other, not saying anything at all. 90 floors above the street, Annie January sat in a Vought conference room and smiled for 11 minutes straight. The topic was crisis messaging. The screen behind Ashley showed a bar chart with the boy's name on it, sliding down and to the right, and everybody in the room called that a win. Annie kept her hands folded, She had joined the 7 14 weeks earlier, believing every word on the recruitment poster. She had watched the bridge tape like the rest of the country, and she had believed that too, for about a day. Then she noticed something small. In the version the network ran, the bus fell before he let go of it. She went back and watched again. It still happened in the wrong order. Nobody else in the building seemed to care, which told her everything she needed to know about the building. The raw file lived on an internal server that Ashley's team used for edits. Getting to it took a badge, a stairwell, and a courtesy nobody questioned, because Vought had spent 6 months teaching its own staff that Starlight was the harmless one. She pulled the folder at 2:40 in the morning. 19 minutes of original footage, 4 cameras, one of them a traffic pole the editors had forgotten existed. On her way out, a motion sensor woke up in the corridor, and she did the thing she almost never did on camera. She reached out and took the light. Her power did not make light so much as gather it. Every lamp within about 30 feet dimmed for a moment and fed her, and the sensor's little red eye went dark with them. Train found her in the north stairwell. He looked like a man who had not slept in a week, because he had not. He did not threaten her. He asked quietly if the file she was carrying was the bridge. Then he sat down on the step, which is not a thing that man ever did, and he told her he had been in the edit suite when they cut it. Nobody made him watch. He watched anyway. He said the words out loud into her phone, name, title, date, and he did not ask her to protect him. He said one more thing before he went back up. The kid arrested me and never once hit me. I have thought about that every day since. 2 nights later, Peter was on a water tower in Queens with his mask in his lap, when the sky went white behind him. He was on his feet before the light finished landing. It was the girl from the billboards, glowing at about 1/10 of what she could do, hands open, standing at the edge of the roof gravel like someone approaching a stray dog. "Please don't web me," she said. "I'd never live it down." Peter stayed exactly where he was. "You're one of the 7. I'm the one who has been in the room," she said, and put the drive on the ledge between them. He looked at it for a long moment. "People have been leaving me presents lately. The last one had a tracker in it." "Then check it here," she said. "I'll wait. I'm not in a hurry to go back." He checked it there, on the roof, with the suit at 34%, and Karen's voice thinning at the edges. And the fake fell apart in about 90 seconds, because a lie made out of real footage can only survive as long as nobody sees the original. The network version was a re-encode, which meant it carried no camera time code, only a burned-in clock somebody had typed in by hand. The raw file carried a real one, stamped by the camera, 4 frames a second, unbroken. Laid side by side, the broadcast cut was missing 11 seconds. Not blurred. Missing. 260 frames lifted out of the middle and the ends stitched together, which is why the bus in the fake appeared to fall before he reached it. In the raw, the traffic pole camera held the whole thing in one shot. Homelander cut the roadway out from under it. Peter caught the bus 11 feet above the water and fed the fall out across 16 lines, and it hung there while 43 people came up a web ladder hand over hand, and Homelander came down through the roof on him partway through. The 11 seconds they cut were the 11 seconds he was catching it. A-Train's confession was on the same drive. 12 minutes of it, recorded in a stairwell, dates and all. Peter set the drive down very carefully, like it might go off. "Why do you still do it?" Annie said. He did not answer straight away. Below them the city made its usual noise. Sirens, a car alarm, somebody's television. "Everyone in that tower has a number for you," she said. "And you're losing. You know you're losing." "Yeah," Peter said. "I know. So why?" "Because I can do this," he said. "And almost nobody can. That's the whole thing. If I can lift the bus and I decide not to, then whatever happens to those 43 people is mine. Not Vaught's, not his." "Mine. Nobody hands you that. You just notice it one day, and then you can't unnotice it." Annie looked at him for a while. "That's not how anybody here talks." "I've been told," he said. She did not hand him the raw file to be thanked. She handed it over and then told him the part she had not written down anywhere. 2 weeks ago, the language inside the building changed. Edgar stopped saying the boy and started saying the situation. Legal opened a file with no name on the tab, and on Tuesday a freight elevator that had not been serviced since 2009 was suddenly booked for 4 consecutive nights, moving something out of long-term storage and down into Tower Sub-Level 9. "Sub-Level 9, Peter repeated. "There is no Sub-Level 9 on the building plans," Annie said. "There is on the fire plans. Whatever they are moving needs its own power feed and a medical team on standby." She gave him what she had. A logistics manifest, 3 internal emails, a rotation schedule with 14 names blacked out. Every one of the documents used the same word for the thing being moved, and every one of them used it as if the reader already knew. The contingency. Prep the contingency. Sub-Level 9 is cleared for the contingency. Thermal thresholds confirmed for the contingency. Peter read all of it twice, and then a third time, looking for the sentence that explained the word. There wasn't one. 22 blocks. That was the size of the net Vought dropped over the east side before sunrise, and every inch of it was for one kid in a red and blue suit. Ashley called it a community safety operation. On paper it was 300 officers, 9 helicopters, and a tip line. Underneath it was simpler than that. The 7 had been told to bring him in, and the ones sent out first were the ones nobody would miss on television. The Deep, a train, Black Noir. Homelander stayed home. That detail mattered more than anything else in the briefing, and Peter noticed it before he noticed the helicopters. "They want to see how I fight," he said. Karen answered from somewhere behind his ear, slower than she used to. "Suit integrity 34%, Peter. Please avoid extended engagements." 34. It had been 87 the night he landed in this city. He looked at the number for a second and then folded it away where he kept the things he could not fix. The Deep found him first, because the Deep always went where the cameras were. He had a press pool waiting on the Fulton Pier and a wetsuit with the logo on the chest. He had also brought the harbor with him. That was the part people forgot about the man. He could pull anything with gills into a straight line, and he had spent 2 days lining up a swarm of them under the pilings. Peter watched him from a light pole and did the math out loud. "Everything he does goes through water, Karen. He needs the water to touch him to send anything. So take the water away from him." It was not clever. It was plumbing. Peter dropped, put 4 strands into the pier's main drain grate, and pulled it a quarter turn shut. Then he webbed the hydrant lines, the bilge hose, and the standpipe in a single pass, sealing every wet path off the dock in under 9 seconds. The Deep called his animals. Nothing arrived. He called them again, louder, in front of 11 cameras and a live feed, standing in a wetsuit on dry planks with his hand out and his mouth moving. A dolphin surfaced 60 feet out and went back under. Peter landed behind him and did not throw a punch. "Nice outfit," Peter said. "Is the zipper in the back, or does somebody help you?" That was the whole fight. The deep swung once, hit a web line strung at ankle height, and went into the water he had been so proud of. The clip ran for 11 hours. By that night he had read a statement about mental health and stepped away from the 7, and Vought's stock lost 4 points on a Tuesday. Peter did not celebrate. He had just watched a man get destroyed by his own press conference, and it did not feel like winning. A-Train came at 3 in the morning, which was smarter. Speed hated witnesses less than it hated obstacles. Peter had worked that out on Titan and worked it out again here. A man running at 200 miles an hour cannot steer. He can only choose a line, and every line in a city runs through the same 11 crossings, because everything else has parked cars in it. So Peter did not chase him. He built. He strung 41 tripwire strands across the Grand Street underpass at shin height, each one anchored to a load-bearing column, each one attached to a folded net stitched into the ceiling. Web tension released faster than it pulled. That was the trick nobody understood about the stuff. The strands did not have to stop him. They only had to let go at the right time. A-Train hit the 3rd wire, and the ceiling came down on him as a net. 200 miles an hour became 0 across 9 feet of stretch, and he rolled out of it alive because Peter had spent an hour calculating that exact number. Then Peter walked down out of the dark and crouched where the man could see him. "You're going to break my neck," A-Train said. "I already didn't." Peter said. "Then get it over with. Everybody gets something out of me eventually. I want to know what's in sub-level 9. You don't want to know what's in sub-level 9. I really do. And you already told Starlight. So you've said it once." A-Train stopped breathing hard. "Nobody's ever cut me loose before," he said. Peter cut him loose. It took one motion, and it cost him the only advantage he had spent the whole night building. A-Train sat on the concrete for a long moment, rubbing his knee, looking at a kid who had every reason to hand him to the police and had not. Then he said a word that was not a name, Stormfront, and told him it was not a project. It was a person. She had been in a box under the tower since 1979, and Vought was warming her up. He ran before Peter could ask a second question. But he came back. Twice that week he came back, with a route, with a shipping manifest, with a time, calling from payphones like a man who did not trust his own house. Peter never asked why. He knew why. Somebody had chosen not to hurt him, and it had rearranged something. Black Noir did not make a sound and did not send a warning. He simply waited 3 days and picked the building. It was a talc plant on the water, 4 floors, and he had already opened every one of the bags. 200 pounds of powder hung in the air when Peter came through the roof vent, and it did not settle because Noir had left the ventilation fans running on low. The mask's optics went white in half a second. Thermal useless because powder holds heat. Sonar useless because every surface returned the same soft nothing. Karen said visual compromised and then said it again, and then stopped saying anything for 4 seconds, which had never happened before. Peter closed his eyes on purpose. That was the moment the fight actually started. The thing people misunderstood about the spider sense was that it was not magic, and it was not warning. It was pressure. Fine hairs across his arms and neck read the air moving toward his skin before the thing moving it arrived, and a body swinging a blade pushed a wall of air ahead of it about 0.6 of a second early. In clean air, that signal drowned in wind and traffic and noise. In a sealed room full of hanging powder, every movement drew a shape in the dust, and the dust pushed back on his skin. Noir had built himself a blindfold and handed one to a boy who did not need eyes. The first strike came from above and behind. Peter was not there. He caught the wrist on the way past, redirected it to a support column, and was gone before the knife finished its arc. The second came low. He felt the powder compress at his ankles and jumped without looking, and the blade went through the space where his shins had been. Noir adjusted. He stopped swinging wide and started working short and tight, and it got much harder, and Peter took a cut across the ribs that went through nanotech like paper. Karen's voice came back thin. Integrity critical. Then stop protecting me, Peter said. Put everything in the webs. He stopped dodging and started counting instead. Noir moved in threes, high, low, then a step to reset his weight, every time, a rhythm drilled into him so long ago it had stopped being a choice. On the 11th cycle, Peter did not evade the low strike. He caught it, on purpose, on his forearm, took the cut, and used the man's own committed weight to walk him backward into the freight door. Then he shot 40 strands at once, not at Noir, at the 4 ceiling fans. He tore them off their mounts and dropped the whole cloud out of the air in one breath. For 2 seconds there was clear air and Black Noir standing in it, and Peter saw the mask turn slightly, the way a man looks when the thing he counted on has been taken. Peter hit him once, in the chest, hard enough to break the floor under his heels. He did not hit him again. Instead, he webbed him, all of him, arms folded across his own body, and swung him out over the water and up the side of the Sherman crane, 40 stories over the harbor, and stuck him to the boom facing east, so that when the sun came up, every news chopper in the city would find him there. Alive, unarmed, untouched otherwise, a man who had killed for Vought for 30 years, hanging in the morning like a sign. Karen said, Peter, suit integrity 9, but she did not finish the word. The mask went dark from the inside. No gold lines, no readout, no voice. Just fabric on his face and his own breathing inside it, and the whole city humming underneath him with nobody to narrate it. He sat on the crane arm for a while with his hand flat against the metal. Okay, he said. Okay. Then he stood, fired one line at a water tower 9 blocks south, and let go of the crane before he could think about it. For 9 days Peter did not go outside. The suit hung on a bent coat rack in the back of Frenchie's workshop, dark and quiet, 9% left in the cells, and no voice in the mask. Every few hours he looked over at it anyway. He kept waiting for the little chime that meant Karen had come back. It never came, so he stopped waiting and started working. Frenchie cleared the long table with his forearm and put down 4 blood samples in sealed tubes. 2 came from translucent. 1 came from a Vought courier bag Kimiko had taken off a van in Newark. The last one was A-trains, given willingly, which nobody in the room said out loud. Here is the thing nobody looks at, Frenchie said, tapping the tubes. Everybody studies what the V makes them do. Nobody studies what it costs them to do it. Peter leaned in. What does it cost? Air, Frenchie said. Absurd amounts of air. That was the crack in the wall. Compound V did not add a battery to a person. It rebuilt muscle so it could dump power far faster than a human body could ever refuel it, and refueling meant oxygen. A-Train's blood after a sprint carried lactate levels that would have put a marathon runner in a hospital bed. His body cleared it in 90 seconds instead of 2 hours. That clearance was not magic. It was a lung and a heart moving 4 to 6 times the normal volume of air, right at the moment the soup needed it most. Peter stared at the numbers on the tube labels for a long time. So they are strong, he said slowly, but they are strong on credit. Frenchie smiled for the first time in a week. They built the answer over the next 4 nights. The delivery was easy, because Peter had already solved delivery when he was 15. The hard part was the payload. He mixed a 2-part web fluid. The left cartridge carried a long-chain polymer, thin and syrupy, that stayed liquid in the line. The right cartridge carried a curing agent. The 2 threads only touched at the nozzle, on the way out, which gave them about 1/3 of a second in open air before contact. Alone, either one was a sticky mess. Together, they were a shell. The genius was what set them off. The polymer cured on carbon dioxide, and the highest concentration of carbon dioxide anywhere in a fight was 6 inches in front of a soup's mouth. Peter did not have to aim at a face. He had to aim at a breath. The web found the exhale, hardened around the nose and jaw in under 2 seconds, and left a one-way valve at the base. Air went out. Nothing came back in. Frenchie called it la muselière. Peter called it the rebreather choke, and hated the name, and used it anyway. It did not suffocate anyone. That mattered more to Peter than anything else on the table. A hydrolysis timer sat in the polymer itself, a weak bond that water vapor from the wearer's own breath ate through on a fixed schedule. 40 seconds of nothing to inhale, and a soup running on oxygen debt went down like a dropped coat. 6 minutes later the shell went soft and crumbled off on its own. Nobody died. Nobody even bruised. It was a set of handcuffs for the lungs, and Peter could carry 90 doses in a belt that weighed less than a textbook. Then they tested it. had built the rig out of a hydraulic press and a salvaged crash test head, and he had geared it deliberately low. 1/10 of the force they had clocked off Homelander at the bridge. 1/10 because they wanted to see the thing succeed before they asked it to do the impossible. The web fired, the shell cured, the rig pushed. It broke in 1 9/10 seconds. The room went very quiet. Frenchie ran it again with a thicker cure, 2.4 seconds. He ran it a third time, doubled the polymer weight, and got 3 seconds and a cracked jaw plate on his own rig. Peter sat on an upturned crate with his elbows on his knees. "Run the number for me," he said. Frenchie already had. At 1/10, 3 seconds. At full, you have maybe a quarter of one. And a stronger shell. Cracks faster. It is rigid. Rigid is what breaking means. Peter rubbed his eyes. Okay. So we make it flexible. Then he inhales through it. Frenchie said, "And now you have thrown a scarf at a god." Peter, listen to me. It works. It will drop anything under about a deep, and I would bet my hands on it against most of the 7. It will never work on him. Not with more chemistry, not with more of you. Peter said nothing for a while. "Great," he said finally. "So I built the world's most expensive gag gift." Frenchie went to get coffee, which was Frenchie's way of leaving somebody alone. And alone, on a crate, in a basement, Peter finally looked at the problem the right way up. He had been asking how to hold Homelander still. That was the wrong question. and it had been the wrong question since the bridge. Nothing held that man still. Not webbing, not chemistry, not a building falling on him. He had watched it happen. He had felt the answer through his own gloves, but he had also watched the man stop cold at 2 drops of his own blood in front of 300 phones. He had watched him check where the cameras were before he threw anything. He had watched Vought spend $10 million on a bounty rather than let one raw clip out. All of it circled the same thing, and the thing was not strength. Homelander was not afraid of being hurt. He was afraid of being seen. Peter stood up so fast the crate went over. He found MM's laptop and asked for everything they had on Vaught's broadcast side. Frenchie came back with 2 coffees, took one look at his face, and put both cups down. The uplink was the piece nobody had ever thought to want. Vought owned its own satellite feed out of the tower roof, a Q-band dish that pushed to 11 partner networks at once for gala coverage and 7 debuts. The dish itself was hardened. The encoder room on sub-level 2 was hardened. But underneath all of it sat a legacy line called Emergency National Simulcast, built after 9/11 so the company could shove a SuperTAC warning into every affiliate in the country inside 4 seconds, without asking a single station's permission. It did not use a password. It could not afford the delay. It authenticated on a hardware token, a physical key, carried in a locked case in the outside broadcast truck. And an outside broadcast truck by definition parked outside. Frenchie started laughing quietly. "You do not want to fight him," he said. Peter shook his head, and his voice came out steady in a way it had not for weeks. "I want to fight him in front of everybody," he said. "Not to win, I cannot win, but he cannot help himself, and if the whole world is watching when he stops helping himself, that does it. He has spent 40 years being the thing everyone loves. Take that, and there is nothing underneath." He picked up a spent cartridge and turned it over in his fingers. "We do not need a weapon that stops him," he said. "We need a stage, an uplink, and about 100 million people who will not look away." Stan Edgar did not raise his voice when he ended the debate. He set one page on the table in the war room and turned it around. "Homelander Day," it said. "1 stage in Midtown, 1 live feed, 8 days out." Ashley read it twice and started breathing through her mouth. "Every network," she said. "Every network," Edgar agreed. "Every phone. The point of a saturation event is that there is nothing else to look at. Nobody in that room asked what the event was for. They all knew. A brand under attack does not argue with the attack. It buries it under something louder." Homelander stood at the window with his back to all of them. "Say the number," he said. Edgar said the number. 1.4 billion households projected across 190 countries. The largest single live audience in the history of the company. "Good," Homelander said. Then he smiled at the glass, and the smile was for nobody. Edgar waited until the room emptied. Then he made one call, and 9 floors below the street, a door that had not opened in 40 years opened. Sub-level 9 was not a lab. It was storage. The lights came up in banks, and the woman inside stood while they were still warming, because she had heard the lock disengage, and she had been waiting a very long time for that sound. She wore a coat that was new, and a face that was not. She walked out past 2 guards who had never been told what she was, only that they were not to speak to her. Edgar met her at the elevator. 8 days. He told her, "You will be in the crowd, not on the stage." She smiled at that the way an adult smiles at a rule she intends to break. Then she rolled her fingers, and the air in the corridor went dry and sharp, the way it does before a storm arrives. Small blue threads crawled up her knuckles and died. She did not throw lightning so much as make it, pulling charge out of the air around her hands until it had nowhere to go but forward. Vought called her the contingency. She had another name, older than the building. Across the city, on a table with a burn ring in the varnish, Peter laid out the plan in 11 minutes. He had not slept. Frenchie had the uplink schematic taped to the wall behind him, with 3 red circles on it. Had the crowd numbers. Huey had a legal pad, and no idea what to write on it. "The stage feed goes to a truck," Peter said. "The truck goes to a satellite. The satellite goes to 190 countries, and every one of those countries takes the same signal off the same relay, because Vought owns the relay. There is one wire. That is the whole system. One wire." Frenchie tapped a circle on the wall. 40 seconds, he said. "That is what we hold it for before their engineers cut us out." 40 seconds is enough, Peter said. "It has to be raw footage and the V-files together. If it is only the footage, they say it is fake. If it is only the files, they say it is stolen." Both at the same time, in front of the whole planet. Then he started handing it out, person by person, and the room got quiet because he did it without asking anyone. "Frenchie, you are in the truck." You cut in at the top of his speech, not before. You are on the crowd. If it goes bad, the exits are the story, not the fight, so you get the barriers open before anything happens. Huey, you are with the files. You upload the second the feed takes. Kimiko, you are on Huey, and if the crowd turns, you take him out through the north side. Nobody argued. That was new. Butcher had been leaning against the doorframe the entire time with his arms folded, waiting for his name like a man waiting for a slap. "And me," he said. "You are on Stormfront," Peter said. Butcher laughed once. "That's the job, is it? That's the job. She will not be on the stage. Edgar will not risk her on camera, so she will be in the crowd, close to the barrier, dressed like a person. You know what to look for better than any of us. You find her, and you do not engage. You call it in. I don't call things in, mate. You do this time." Butcher's jaw worked. Around the table, nobody moved. "Say it," Peter said. "I need to hear you say it, because if you go after her alone, you will die in front of 60,000 people, and then the story is a dead man, not the files." Butcher looked at the kid for a long moment. Then he picked up his glass, drank what was in it, and set it down. "Fine," he said. "I call it in." Mem sat back very slowly, like a man who had just watched a building move. Huey stared at his legal pad. Frenchie said nothing at all, which for Frenchie was extraordinary. Later, alone, Peter pulled the mask off and looked at the readout on the inside of the lens. 9%. It had been 9% for 6 days, and Karen had not spoken since the warehouse. He put a hand flat on the chest plate anyway, the way you do with something that used to answer. Then he put the mask back on and turned to the room. 8 days, he said. "Get me on that stage. Everything that happened in that plaza happened because Peter made one decision at 20 to 7 in the morning, and it was not a brave one." He looked at the suit's power reading, saw 9%, and did not go looking for a charge. He had 11 hours. He spent them memorizing the seating map instead. where the children were, where the exits choked, which side of the stage would fall first if it fell. He was not planning a fight. He was planning a rescue and hoping a fight showed up around it. By 6 in the evening, there were 60,000 people packed into the plaza under the tower, and 190 countries were carrying the feed live. Vought had sold Homelander Day as the biggest broadcast in the company's history. They were right about that part. Frenchie sat in a service van 2 blocks east with a laptop and a coffee he never drank. Had the crowd flow. Huey had a folder of files on a drive the size of a thumbnail. Butcher had the west stairwell and had agreed to hold it without arguing, which was the strangest thing anybody had seen him do in years. Peter had the roof of the uplink shed. The hijack was not magic, and it was never going to look impressive. Vought pushed the world feed through one encoder on the tower's 44th floor, and that encoder pulled its picture from a single fiber run that surfaced for 6 feet on the roof before it dropped back into the building. 6 feet of exposed line. Frenchie had built a splice box that clamped over it, read the signal, and rewrote the video layer while leaving the audio and the timecode untouched. If you cut the timecode, the switcher noticed and dumped to a holding card in under a second. If you left it alone, the switcher never looked twice. Peter clamped the box on at 6:04. Then he sat down on the shed and waited for a man to walk out in front of the world. Homelander came up through the stage floor on a lift with the flag behind him. The noise was enormous. He gave them 4 minutes about strength, and about how a country that forgets who protects it deserves what comes next. And he was very good at it. He had the cadence of a man who had done this 1,000 times. Somewhere around the 4th minute he mentioned a certain young man in a mask, and the crowd got quieter, and he smiled like that was the reaction he wanted. Peter pressed the transmitter. The screens changed. All of them. 9 stories of LED behind the stage, every phone streaming the feed, every arena and airport and living room in 190 countries. First came the raw bridge footage from Starlight's Drive. Uncut. Timecode running. The version where Homelander cuts the roadway and the boy in the mask catches what falls. Then A-Train's recorded statement, 12 minutes of a man crying and naming dates. Then the Compound V documents, distribution schedules, injection lists, ages. There was a particular sound a crowd made when it stopped being an audience. It was not a boo. It was much quieter than that. Homelander turned around and looked at the screens behind him, and for 1.5 seconds, on camera, in front of everyone, he had no expression at all. Stormfront moved before he did. She had been standing in the 3rd row, in a coat and sunglasses, exactly where Peter had guessed she would be, close enough to reach the stage, and far enough to look like nobody. She came up off the ground and put her hand out towards the uplink shed, and 40 feet of concrete went to gravel. Peter was already gone off the roof. He came down into the crowd instead of away from it, because the crowd was where the blast was going, and he webbed a steel barricade flat across the front row like a lid. That was the shape of the whole night. She threw, and he covered. He did not chase her once. On the stage, Homelander started laughing, and it came out wrong. He said their names. He said he had carried them. He said he could unmake this city in an afternoon. And then, still smiling, he looked down at the front of the stage where a boy of about 9 stood frozen with a foam shield in his hand, wearing a Homelander cape his mother had bought him that morning. He looked at the child, and then he looked at the nearest camera and made sure it was pointed at him. Peter covered 14 rows in under 3 seconds. The heat beam hit the stage instead of the boy, because Peter took the boy out from under it, and the stage was what was left. 60 tons of truss, lighting rig and steel came down on the front of the plaza. Peter did not try to catch it. He fired 11 anchor lines into the tower's facade and hauled the whole falling frame 9 feet sideways into the empty loading lane, and it landed on nothing but asphalt. The world watched him do it. The audio was still live. The time code was still clean. Then they fought, and it never once looked like a fight. Homelander hit him through a fountain and Peter came back up. Homelander hit him through a bus shelter and Peter came back up. And every single time he moved between the man and somebody else. He did not throw a punch for the first 90 seconds. He caught a light tower. He caught a woman coming off the barricade. He webbed a gas line shut with his left hand while blocking with his right. "You are embarrassing yourself," Homelander said. "Fight me. I'm busy." They love strength. They have always loved strength. That is what they are. Then why do you keep checking where the cameras are? Homelander stopped, and it was the wrong second to stop. "You have flight," Peter said. "Heat vision, super hearing, and about 600 lawyers, and you are losing a public relations war to a guy who does his own laundry." The crowd heard it because the audio was live, and 60,000 people made a sound Homelander had never had aimed at him before. They laughed, not with him. He came apart after that. He stopped aiming at Peter entirely and started aiming at the plaza, which was exactly the mistake Peter had been building toward for 8 days. Every wild shot was another shot the world saw him take, at people who had come there to cheer for him. Stormfront went for the north exit tunnel, where the crowd was compressed 9 deep. Peter got there first. The polymer was Frenchie's build, and Peter's math. Compound Vith bodies did not stop needing oxygen, they just borrowed against it, and the harder a soup pushed, the faster the debt came due. The web fluid carried a second compound in suspension that stayed liquid until it met exhaled breath. Warm air and moisture set it in about 1.5 seconds. It did not crush a throat. It sealed a mask over the nose and mouth and simply stopped the loan. He put 2 shots on her face while she was mid-sentence, and a third across her hands so she could not tear it. She stayed conscious for around 40 seconds. She spent most of them on her knees. 22 NYPD officers took her off the ground in front of the whole planet, and the feed never cut, because Vought's own switcher had no idea anything was wrong with it. The suit gave out at 0% while Peter was still standing over her. The nanotech went slack across his shoulders and hung there like cloth. The lenses went dark and stayed dark. Karen did not say goodbye. She had said her last words weeks earlier on a crane over the harbor, and this time there was not even a click, which was when the last of the truss let go. A 40-foot section of the video wall had been hanging by 2 bolts since the stage came down, and it peeled off the frame above the medical tent. No web shooters, no targeting, no wings. Peter jumped, got a shoulder under the low corner of it, and held. He walked it 11 steps. He set it down on the barricade line, and it took the weight instead of the tent. And the 6 paramedics under there never knew how close it came. He came out from under it with nothing on him that worked, and blood on his mouth, and he stood up anyway. Homelander was 30 feet up and screaming about ingratitude when Maeve landed between them. She did not raise her hands. She did not say anything clever. She stood in front of the kid in the dead suit with her arms at her sides and looked up at him, and behind her the whole plaza turned to watch what he would do about it. That was the thing that finished him. Not the polymer, not a punch. 60,000 people and 190 countries watching him decide, in real time, whether to kill a woman he had known for 20 years in order to reach a boy who had spent the entire night saving strangers. He hung there for 4 seconds. Then he stopped mid-word, went straight up, and was gone before anyone thought to follow the camera. Nobody cheered him leaving. They did not seem to notice he had left. Peter was on his knees near the medical tent, mask peeled back to the bridge of his nose, trying to get his breathing under control, when the boy with the foam shield walked up and asked if he was okay. Somewhere near the back, one voice started it, and the row in front picked it up, and then the whole plaza had it. Not Web Weaver. They had stopped saying that weeks ago. They were chanting the name he had given himself. 41%. That was how much of Vought International went away in a single trading day. It happened before the crowd outside the tower had even gone home. $18 billion evaporated between the opening bell and lunch. The Compound V files were the reason, not the fight. People had watched a man in a cape try to kill a kid on live television, and then they had read the paperwork explaining where that man came from, and the two things together did something no protest had ever managed. By Thursday, 9 countries had opened criminal inquiries. By Friday, 3 retailers had pulled the entire 7 merchandise line from their shelves without being asked. Stan Edgar resigned in a statement 4 sentences long. He did not apologize in any of them. Ashley kept her job for 6 more days. She spent most of them trying to find a version of the truth that could still be sold. And there wasn't one. And she knew it before anyone told her. The last thing she did in that building was delete a folder of unaired footage. Somebody had already copied it. Starlight did not resign in a statement. She did it on the Seven's own stage, at the podium with the logo behind her, at a press conference Vought had called to talk about something else entirely. She stood there in the suit they had designed for her and told a room of 200 reporters exactly what had been done to her and to the girls before her and what was in the shots. Then she took the belt off and set it on the podium and walked out through the front doors. Nobody stopped her. There was nobody left with the authority to try. Homelander was not seen for 11 days. The theories filled the gap the way theories do. Peter did not follow them. He had a broken hand and no suit, and he spent most of that week sitting on Huey's couch eating cereal out of a mixing bowl because the bowls were dirty and neither of them had done anything about it. The thing he did not expect started in Bay Ridge. A 14-year-old pulled 2 people out of an overturned sedan on the Belt Parkway and waited for the ambulance with them. He was wearing a red hoodie and a mask his sister had sewn out of an old pillowcase. It was a bad mask. He had no powers at all. A week later there were dozens of them across 4 boroughs, kids in homemade masks doing small, unglamorous work, jumping cables, carrying groceries upstairs, standing at intersections where the lights had failed. The city gave them a name the papers hated. The papers used it anyway. Butcher watched a clip of one of them on a phone in a parked car, a girl of maybe 12 directing traffic around a downed line in the rain. He watched it twice. Then he put the phone face down on the dash. "Yeah, all right," he said, to absolutely nobody. Maybe the kid's all right. Frenchie spent 9 days on the suit. The nanotech was beyond him, and he admitted it freely, but the power cells were not, and Stark had built them to be salvaged. He harvested 4 dead cells for 1 working one, and lost most of the storage doing it. What came back was not the Iron Spider. It was a red and blue suit with a scavenged core, running at about 1/5 of what it once had, and it took a full minute to boot. Peter sat on the floor with the mask in both hands and waited. "Hello, Peter." He didn't answer right away. He wasn't able to. "Hi, Karen," he said. "It's really good to hear you. Here is the thing this whole story was actually about. Power does not make anybody good. It never has. In this world, the strongest people alive had turned themselves into products, and a product protects its own value first, and every single time the bill came due, somebody with no power at all was handed it. Peter Parker did not beat Homelander because he hit harder. He never hit harder. He beat him by refusing to put the weight down in front of 190 countries, on a day when putting it down would have been easier and nobody would have blamed him. That is the difference, and it is the only difference. Not the strength, the choice to carry it. He went back out that night, on 1/5 of the power, over a city that finally knew his name. But here is where it gets interesting. What if it had not been Peter at all? What if the man who woke up in a world with no rules was Steve Rogers, and the universe he landed in was the one where Omni-Man had just finished murdering the Guardians of the Globe?